Hello and welcome to the long-awaited and long-delayed review of the Thokk Weapon Master Gauntlets. This has been delayed for a bunch of reasons, not least that I have and currently still have COVID, but I'm mostly better and I'm bored out of my mind, so I thought I would get around to doing this review at last. If there's lots of chops and changes and stops and things like that, it's because I'm having a coughing fit and had to pause and re-record what was going on. So I got these about 2 months ago, give or take, I think. I had a bunch of teething troubles, which is other things that have delayed the reviews, but by and large they've had a good run. I have now, as of last weekend, taken them to a tournament, a Longsword and a Saber tournament, and I'm ready to give a sort of a more comprehensive view of how I think the gloves are and what I would use them for. So before I get into the gloves, a little bit about who I am. My name is Jamie McKeever. I'm an instructor at the London Historical Fencing Club. Have been for about 5 years now. I help run the Wessex League tournaments, which is an annual series of 4 tournaments. I've been doing that for about 4 years, for a total of, I think, 13 events that I've been involved in running. Things like kit check, things like random tournaments. And I'm an active participant in Waterloo Sparring Group. I compete. I've got probably more than 400 tournament fights under my belt by this point in Longsword, which is my main weapon, but I also compete in Saber. I also compete in sort of buckler, rapier and dagger, lots of different weapons, and small sword is the other one. How have I used the gloves so far? As I said, I've had them for about 2 months. I've used them in sparring at my club. I've used them in sparring at Waterloo Sparring Group, which is a much more higher and more intense level of sparring with lots of excellent fencers from different clubs, although mostly they're from my club these days. I've taken them into a tournament, Wolfcall, up in Lincoln. Wolfcall, it was a sort of a mid-sized, mid-level tournament. I was one of the most experienced fencers there, but it still has some excellent. Most people in it had at least a few tournaments under their belt. You know, it wasn't a beginner tournament that I just went into for shits and giggles. My hand got hit in all of these, of course. Wolfcall was a longsword tournament and a saber tournament, so I used it for both. Mostly I've used it for saber, longsword and side sword, and I've tried it out in a bunch of different weapons just to see if it fits, but I haven't really had the opportunity to spar in it. The first question is, right, would I recommend them? Yes. It's a bit more nuanced than that, because what would you recommend them for? So this is with the heavy lining primarily I'm going to be talking about. I haven't really used the light lining, but I will mention that at the end. For something like saber or side sword, I would just categorically recommend them, okay? No, I'm comparing them primarily here to things like Red Dragon. I've also used other 5-finger gloves, part of the review and separately. And frankly speaking, these fit better in sabers and side swords with the heavy lining than any other glove. I've fit them in, obviously this is a Regenier saber, I've got a Regenier side sword, I fit in the complex Kvet number 4, I've fit them in, I don't remember another side sword I used, but it was a bit more complicated guard than my one. I fit them in that. They even fit in an armor class broadsword. Only just, wasn't the most comfortable fit, but they did fit. And I fit them in the Regenier, not the Regenier, the Red Dragon plastic nylon. Again, it was a tight fit, but a fit nonetheless. So the fit is better than any other glove. The protection, without any additional attachment, just the hard plate, is better than any other glove, at least for this purposes. So you have good side protection here. The fingertips are solid. I'll show you it later. Anything which is poking out here outside of the guard is going to be fine. Back of hand, no issues there. I've taken full force blows with a longsword there, no problem. The only places that are not padded by at least 3 different things with the basic lining are here, which is covered by basically anything, and here they only have 3 rather than 4 layers of protection there. I think it's, if you're counting the glove itself. Here, you've also got some kind of hard plate, whereas these places only have sort of 3, or the fingertips of course have a hard plate, the others have 3 kind of functional things. So if you've got any kind of hand protection, anything complex covering your guard at all, these are perfectly fine, which is why I say side sword, saber, just flat out, I would recommend them. I cannot think of a better set of gloves. I'm even comparing them to the Pro Gauntlets there. My friend Alex has a pair of Pro Gauntlets, where the problem is, protection-wise, they're fine. I'll come back to them when we talk about Longsword. But Pro Gauntlets don't fit in many of the swords that I've tried to fit these in, whereas these just comfortably better fit than a Red Dragon, which is what most people are using. And the coverage is so much better. So, for instance, I got stabbed here. My friend Owen got stabbed there at the weekend, and he got cut. He was wearing Red Dragons, I should have said. I got stabbed here by fencing him, actually, by coincidence, and it hit the glove, and my arm was fine. And when you're wearing a jacket, there isn't really any kind of showing skin or anything like that, which is probably one of the worst things about the Red Dragons that most of us use. So, unqualified, I recommend them for that. They wear in very quickly. When you first get them, they're a bit stiff. I think about 2 hours, 3 hours of fencing, and you'll just be like, okay, this is fine. It's not like it's a leather glove, but your dexterity, perfectly good. It's not going to be holding many issues for you. When I fenced it at the Longsword tournament, the Saber tournament, sorry, I was primarily using a thumb grip. I don't know how easily you'll be able to see that with the light, but the thumb grip works perfectly fine on this, which again, even with a Red Dragon or Infinity Gauntlets, which is the other gloves, you can't do that. These you can. So, 2 thumbs up for things like Side Sword and Saber. The other main one I tested it for, Longsword, a bit more qualified. You do need the Longsword badass design. It is very easy to add to it. I would not go into a tournament without it. But having said that, that's how long it takes you to put it on. Obviously it fits on a Longsword perfectly fine. When you're wearing it, try not to break my house. When you're wearing it, right, screw that. When you're wearing it, this is all really well covered, okay? Hits to here, super solid. They are as tough as, for instance, a sparring glove. When you're getting hit there, hit here, no problem. It hits the back of hand. I took several, both in sparring and the tournament, no problem at all. Fingertips, people have said they're a bit worried about the fingertips. You've got to bear in mind that the fingertips have 2 layers of foam. It's not foam, it's whatever weird materials Darrow uses, but 2 layers of sort of semi-hard, that gets harder stuff, then covered by a plastic fingertip protector, then covered by the glove. Okay, so, as I said, 4 layers of protection on the fingertips. I took solid wax to the fingertips. I wasn't concerned. I felt that I had been hit. There was no sense that I might have been broken by it. I actually took, in the Saber tournament, a solid whack to the hand, to my offhand, here, which is the bit without the hard plate. It was a slightly red mark, but my finger was fine, and the next day you couldn't even see that I'd been hit there. So, even without these, it's okay, but I would wear these for Longsword. The only places that are slightly less than ideal is really the top of the index finger. Actually you can see it, I did get whacked there, but the finger is fine, right? And it is still got some protection there. It's not like it's completely unprotected or anything like that. It is not the best protection, and a sword can come down on top. But having said that, I will be using them as my main Longsword gloves from now on. I will be taking them into tournaments. I will be perfectly happy taking them into, for instance, a Swordfish, a Dutch Lions Cup, a heavy hitting tournament. And they are the most dexterous gloves I've used. If you compare them to other Longsword gloves, this is where you might be a slightly more nuanced recommendation. So, for instance, the main other gloves I've used are Space Heavies. I used Collings for a while before everything came out about Colling gloves, and I stopped using them, although then they also fell apart, which is the other reason I stopped using them. But I've also compared them to my friends who've got Pro Gauntlets, my friends who've got Infinity Gauntlets, and a bunch of other things as well. And sparring gloves, of course. These are not the most protective Longsword glove. You will be taking a trade-off between dexterity and protection. But in particular, a solid whack to the back of a Space Heavy, yes, the Space Heavy is going to be giving you more protection than this or any other 5-finger glove. The protection is better than, I would say, the conning glove. The conning glove before it falls apart, as well as especially after it's fallen apart. And certainly better than the Infinity glove or the Sparring glove special, or more or less any other 5-fingered glove, except for perhaps the Pro Gauntlet. Pro Gauntlet is probably the most interesting comparison. If you put aside and ignore things like price and durability, someone gave you 2 broken in but brand new pairs of gloves. They gave you a pair of Thokks with the LBD and a pair of Pro Gauntlets. At the start of a Longsword tournament, they said, which one do you want to use? You might need to think about it, right? I do think the Pro Gauntlet has slightly better protection than this. I think it's also heavier and slightly less dexterity, even with the Longsword ballast design. But I haven't used Pro Gauntlets as extensively. I've only kind of compared them and had a bit of a feel. I did the same with the Infinity Gauntlet. These are way more dexterous and more protective than the Infinity Gauntlet glove, whatever they call it. So, as I say, it's slightly more qualified. Now, if you take out things like the price and the durability issues we've got with Pro Gauntlet, then you might have to think about it more carefully. But putting all that away to one side, this is a perfectly valid choice, and you would be choosing again between slightly more protection from the Pro Gauntlet versus slightly more dexterity from this. I will be going into tournaments with confidence, using these gloves. Okay, so what about some other weapons? This is a bit more from conjecture rather than what I've actually tried them for. So I've already mentioned sort of side sword. If I was doing arming sword, it'd be fine. I'm sure I would probably use this, just because if you don't have any kind of any kind of knuckle protection on this bit, I think I would be less comfortable without using the Longsword ballast design. It doesn't drop in dexterity a lot, to be honest. For very light weapons like small sword or rapier, particularly if you've got a cup hilt rapier where you've got a lot of protection from the sword, you probably could use them, especially with a light lining, but in most cases, why would you want to, right? The dexterity is good. It is less than the leather glove, right? I mean, it was never going to be a leather glove in terms of its dexterity, and it is a bit bulkier. So if you were just doing small sword versus small sword, or you've got a pair of people doing distressor rapier with a couple of cup hilts, yeah, if it was only a pair of gloves you had with you, fine, but I wouldn't buy them to do that. Having said that, if you were doing crazy stuff like what I do, for instance, doing small sword against saber or small sword against longsword, which is great fun, and if you are in the UK, I'm teaching a class on mixed weapon sparring in May at Fight Camp Skirmish, so you can come check out how to do that. These are a great pair of gloves for that, because they give you enough dexterity to be able to use the weapon. They do not, they're not that bulky. They are bulkier than a leather glove, but they're not that bulky, so you're not like sticking out over the guard. And it will let you do mixed weapons with a degree of confidence in the safety of your hands, which is nice. And a big issue when you are doing mixed weapons is the mismatch of equipment expectations. So wouldn't use them for that, generally speaking. Maybe if you had a very open rapier, or if you're doing rapier and dagger and you have one of those powering daggers, which is just like a sort of a ring and then a cross guard, you might want to consider using something like this, right? Certainly if you're using a dragon currently for that sort of situation. I will probably be using the full left one when I do rapier and dagger in tournament. I probably won't do it in sparring, but I probably will do it in tournament. And I've got a sail dagger, so there's at least some protection here. But I've had a few nasty whacks to the dagger arm, especially because it's always out there and someone does a moulinet or something like that. And I think I have a bit more confidence if I've got at least the light lining on one of those. So I will be using him for that. But I'll probably keep using a light leather glove for my cup hilt rapier, because, as I say, it's kind of all covered by a nice little bell of a cup hilt. So what's the point? So that's the broad conclusions in terms of what weapon I would use them for, what would I recommend them for. Let's talk a little bit about the practicalities of them. Okay, so let's just talk about the linings for a second. Okay, I'm going to take this out. I haven't got the light linings with me. Most of the time, most of the situations where you want these gloves, you're going to want the heavy lining. Okay, And to be honest, that's good, because you probably want to leave the lining in the best place. Heavy lining is not actually that heavy. This is, I've got like winter gloves that are heavier than this. Now, if you can see inside it, you can't really hear. This bit here, underneath all this other stuff, that looks like poron or some kind of you know, yellow thick foam, right? So that covers everything. You then got some other kind of viscoelastic foam here and on the back of the fingers, right? This is the stuff that harder you hit it, harder it gets. The fingertip protectors, this doesn't stop there, and you've got plastic fingertip protectors here and here that come down right to the end of the thumb, even come around a little bit, and then you come in. So the heavy lining, perfectly dexterous, you want it for most situations. Changing it around is really easy, right? Honestly, if you need to change it, or you want to, you know, you're switching weapons or something like that, you know, you did a longsword tournament in the morning, you're doing a rapier tournament in the afternoon, changing it takes that long, right? I've done it now, okay? Especially once you've broken it in, it really is very trivial to just try and change the lining, so it's nice and practical. Having said that, like I say, 9 times out of 10, you probably want the heavy lining anyway. And it kind of still works for most of these things with the heavy lining. You know, if I wanted to do sword and buckler and I didn't want to change the lining, there would have been no issue with using the heavy lining on the buckler. It would still fit. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about durability and sort of the strengths and weaknesses these gloves might have compared to some others. I should say one of the reasons that this was delayed is that the first set of gloves I had that arrived had some manufacturing faults with them. Particularly the longsword badass design had a strap that came off, and it broke almost instantly, and I had some rips on one of the lining and a few other issues as well. Having said that, I've now got a new pair. None of these issues appear to have replicated, so I'm pretty sure all of those issues were manufacturing faults, which is why Dario replaced the gloves. So, putting those aside, do I have concerns about durability? Well, I always do, because HEMA gloves will inevitably fall apart. All my other gloves are held together by duct tape at this point, and that's never good, as well as some of the internal stuff being glued back together. So, what concerns will I have with this? I have a slight, from the usage of this glove, I don't know if you'll be able to see it, there was a slight scuff on this. It's pretty minor. That's the only issue I have on these pair of gloves right now after a pretty heavy tournament usage. Unlike other gloves, actually, one of the things that gives me a lot of confidence that these will last quite well is the way that everything's attached. If I'll just rip the lining out again, and again just to prove how easy it is, right? Okay, everything in this lining is either in a pocket like this. These are sort of pockets that hold them in place, or they're sewed in place very deep inside, right? So like this lining, again, I don't know how well you'll be able to see it, it's stitched in, okay? None of these are coming out. If something did break, I'm not sure how it would, but if something did break, you'd be able to see it, and obviously with the lining itself, you would be able to actually just easily replace them. The fingertip protectors, I tried this, you can just take them out. So if one did crack, I'm not sure Dario will ever offer spares, but all you'd have to do is take out the old broken one and put a new one back in. Again, I'm not saying it will, I'm just saying if it did. All the stuff on the outside is held in place in some kind of pocket, right? So these are held in by the stitching here, this is held in here, this is in here. So none of those are sliding around. There's nothing like you have with the sparring glove or the Spez Heavy or the Pro Gauntlet of kind of exposed straps, exposed bungees that get hit by a sword and snap off, which I'm sure we have all seen. And then the other problem with some existing HEMA gloves, you've got the cotton glove, which, as I say, I used to use and stopped for obvious reasons, and as well as some of the issues in terms of the makers. The other major problem with the cotton gloves is that the internal plates are held together. They are plastic plates that are taped to a foam strap, and with sports tape, microfiber tape, and that tape shears. And then what happens is the plastic plate moves around and you can't tell from the outside of the glove, So suddenly you've got this plate rather than here, it's floating around all the way over here or something like that. This has happened to me twice. I'm talking about real situations, not hypotheticals. And it's broken, your fingers are protected, and you don't realize that. So I'm not anticipating any of those being issues with these. The way that everything is held in together, that kind of stuff can't happen. If there is going to be a durability issue, it's going to be with the outer layer. Okay, it's a small scuffle here. I'm not concerned about it. It's only on the very, very outside layer. There's still layers inside that mean that this is not now just exposed to my finger or anything like that. And that's it so far. The issues I had in terms of some of the teething troubles with the rip lining, none of them were showstoppers for the glove. I wasn't particularly happy about them for a new glove, but if they had happened to a glove after a year, I would have kept using the glove with no concerns about the security of my hands. So it's too early to say definitively these are the most durable gloves ever. Maybe there will be issues with the outer lining, but some of the common causes of failure that we see with other HEMA gloves are unlikely to happen with these based upon the way that they are constructed. And that gives me a lot of happiness. So I'm hoping for a while at least I will not have any glove, or I will not have my main glove held together by tape, which will make me and my wife very pleased. Okay, so in summary, sorry, this has been a bit of a rambling video. I had a whole planned out and I forgot to follow my plan, but hopefully it was useful. So in summary, fantastic gloves. I will be using them for everything from training up to tournament level in longsword, with the longsword ballast design, sword and buckler, both side sword and armory sword. With armory sword, I'll use the longsword ballast design. Without the ballast design, I will be using them for saber, for side sword. I may use them at least at tournament level for my dagger hand, for rapier and dagger. If I'm doing small sword, mixed weapons, I will be using them. Essentially every weapon I'm using that isn't a light weapon, I'll be using them. I will not be using them for cup hilt rapiers. I will not be using them for small sword versus small sword, because they would be overkill. Unless they were the only gloves I happen to have in my bag, and at least that way I'd be able to participate without too much concern. So the long story short, fantastic gloves, not much more expensive than other gloves. They run at €250-ish, so they are the higher end of the middle band of glove prices. Your fingers are probably worth the expense, I would say. So highly recommended. Well done, Dario. Long time coming, but I am satisfied. I'm very pleased with them, and I will be using them as my main glove from now on going forward. Thanks for watching. Sorry for rambling. Sorry for all the random cuts for coughing fits.